everyone, and welcome to the Farmer Supply Association Agri Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmer Supply Association. We're taping on March the 7th, and we're really off to an early start. I was looking at some stuff on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, but about, they were calling it the leaf index and the bloom index, and just showing that we were about probably anywhere from 15 to 20 days ahead of normal. Where things have started blooming and leafing out and everything. It's probably 15 to 20 days ahead of where it would normally be at this time of the year. So, things are really off to a quick start. Field work wise, pretty much the same thing. There's been a lot of tillage take place. Of course, there was a lot of tillage last fall. So in those cases where they're ready for stale seed bed or maybe even a no-till situation, obviously, no tillage there, but burn down herbicides have gone out. Not everybody's got their burn down out, but a lot of burn downs out. You can see the fields turning yellow, and so a lot of burn downs have gone out. A lot of tillage taking place where there needs to be tillage. So we're really set up for early planting. Now, we're a little bit early for that, so as again we tape on March the 7th, it's kind of spotty. There's a lot of areas that are dry enough to do whatever you want to in the field, and you'll see fields with water standing. It's really as spotty as I can remember it in a while. So there's a lot of variability out there, but I think one thing for sure, I think most people are not wanting to plant quite yet. So I think we need a little rainy period here, maybe to keep it wet till about the end of March. My sweet spot is always starting about the last week of March and then going into April for planting. But so hopefully we'll get some enough rainfall to kind of keep people out of the field for a little while right now. Another thing, and I was reminded of that this morning talking to one of our farmers. He was saying the same thing about how we'd like to have maybe at least 2 or 3 weeks before we can get started planting rice. The seed supply in rice, as everyone knows, is really tight this year. And there are certain varieties and hybrids you're not going to get. I mean, they're just not available right now. So, you got one chance at this planting window to get your crop emerged, or you're not going to have seed for a second planting or replant unless you switch to, maybe a medium grain or something like that. We know the market's not very good for that right now. So anyway, hopefully we'll buy some time here, and then when we get some good planting conditions, the temperatures will be warm and we can get that crop right up. So that's kind of where we're at right now, a little ahead of normal, and just wanting a little break to buy some time before we really get into planting. I talked about, the burn down herbicide applications that have been put out there. There's still some to be made. Not everybody's got theirs out, and some may need to make a second one right at planting. So I wanted to go back over the plant backs. I talked about the plant backs last month, but, back at that time, really plant backs weren't an issue. Now we're getting close enough to planting that we really need to keep these plant backs in mind. So I want to go through the plant backs, the major burn down herbicides we use, and the major crops. There's other herbicides used in burn down besides these, but these are the main ones that I deal with. 2,4-D for rice, it's 21 days. For corn, it's 7 days, and for soybeans, it's 14 days. First shot, no plant back on rice, a 14-day plant back for corn, and a 7-day plant back for soybeans. Sharpen, really not much of an issue. There could be on soybeans, if you have some extremely sandy soil and you're going a higher rate. Most people go an ounce on the burn down. If you're going up there more than an ounce and you've got a real sandy soil, then we may need to think about plant backs. But in general, for most cases, we don't have a plant back to deal with sharpen. But if you have some of those other situations, be sure and check that out. Section 3, clethodim, select max, whichever one you're using. We've got to keep that in mind on the grass type plants, grass crops, rice, corn, and grain sorghum. We do have that 30-day plant back, and always keep that in mind. It's very real, so keep that in mind. Of course, no issue with soybeans on the Section 3. If you might have put some dual down back in the fall for ryegrass control, really not aware of very many around here that did, but you remember, you don't plant rice behind that dual if it was applied in the fall. You've got an automatic yield reduction right there, even if you don't see symptoms. So don't plant rice back in those fields that may have had dual applied. Valor, there's a 30-day plant back behind Valor if you put that down for residual control. Of course, the exception to that would be soybeans, where we wouldn't have any issue at all. So keep those plant backs in mind and avoid any kind of trouble with those. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about rice weed control. what I want to go over, and I go over this every year, I usually submit several barnyard grass seed head samples from Farmer Supply customers who had, escaped barnyard grass in their fields, whether it was be widespread barnyard grass escapes or maybe just some scattered ones around the field. I collect seed head samples back usually late August or September, submit those to the University of Arkansas for screening, and then we usually get the results back in January or February. I got them back earlier this year in January, so just want to report back on those samples I sent off, what they ended up being resistant to, if anything. I sent off 14 samples again this year. So I've sent off 41 samples over the past 5 years. Of those 14, 6 were resistant to propanil, 8 were resistant to facet, 2 to New Path, 1 to Regiment, and 1 to Clincher. You look at the last 5 years, 41 samples, 27 have been resistant to propanil, 29 to facet, 16 to New Path, 3 to Regiment, and 6 to Clincher. So you can see, it seemed like this year there was a lot less ones that screened to be resistant, tested to be resistant to these herbicides. So we really don't know for sure what's going on there. I mean, I'm confident in the testing procedure. So maybe what this is telling me is that this past year, maybe more than resistance, some of the issues we had were more related to environmental conditions, dry conditions, hot conditions, whatever the case may be, or maybe some application issues, something like that. I always say every year that we don't rely on post-emerge herbicides because there's so many things, whether it's weather conditions, application conditions, nearby crops. There's so many issues you have to face with those post-emerge applications that we need to really depend on the residuals. So I think this just bears that out a little bit more. Again, our main goal should be to try to avoid these grasses, especially the barnyard grass. That's the worst one. Try to keep barnyard grass from emerging. That way we don't have to rely on those post-emerge situations. So another thing out of this samples, command, no samples were resistant to command. None were resistant to Previsia. Had one sample that was a little more tolerant to Roundup. It was about 40% controlled compared to the 100% we'd like to see. So that was the only little hiccup at all, was the one that was a little tolerant to Roundup. So again, that's just kind of the results from this past year, and also the 5 years combined that I've been doing this. So what does this tell us? It's the same thing I preach on every year. Keep the barnyard grass from coming up. Overlap residuals. I think most cases you really need 3 different applications. A lot of people balk at that. Some are only going to go 1. A lot will only go 2, and not get that 3rd one out there. But I think in most cases we've got enough of a big window there before we flood up that we really need 3. Sometimes maybe 2 is all right, but really like to see 3 different applications. Get one out there. As soon as you get a rain to get it activated, be looking for the next opportunity to get the 2nd one out there. And then if you're still a ways from flooding, look for that opportunity to get that 3rd one out there after that next rain of activation. So let's keep that in mind. There's several options as far as herbicides. We've got Command, we've got Prowl, we've got Obey, which is a Facet Command premix. We've got Rice One, which is a Command Prowl premix. We also got, of course, Bolero. Facet still has some pre-activity on barnyard grass, even though we have this resistance. Some say it doesn't, some say it does, but it still may possibly have some pre-emerge activity on your barnyard grass. Of course, it's got great, or has some really help for you on the black seeded weeds, indigo and coffee bean and morning glory. So let's work all of those herbicides into our program. Again, make 2 to 3 applications and hopefully keep this grass from coming up and other weeds as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Hopefully we're going to get a good planting window right out about the end of March or end of April, and we can get off to a good start on this crop. This has been Randy Klepeczka with your Farmer Supply Association Agri Report.